strength is laid on the ordinance.
I didn't do it.
It wasn't on. I'm sorry.
Oh. So one of the.
So we gotta start over?
No.
Oh boy.
So one of the discussions we had was about your placement of signs. With having such a large road right of way, which having such a large road right of way, having an additional setback, it really messes with your visual, all right? Because it looks like it's way farther off the road than it is based on the right of way. Clear vision. So we want to make sure that when you pull up to an intersection, that that the sign is not going to block your views. Projections again.
Well, wait. Number 2. What is it saying here? No sign shall be located in the clear vision triangle area described in error.
So that there is a link to a specific section in the ordinance.
Oh.
And when I converted it to a Word file, that link didn't get carried over. So that will refer back to the section in the greater zoning ordinance for that section.
All right, because I was confused. What was supposed to be there?
Yeah, unfortunately, I just saw it earlier this evening. But when we converted it to the Word file, some of those references that were like links online showed up as the error.
So the clear vision triangle, that's like the intersection. There's just a triangle that you're looking at that you've got to keep
Correct.
open for view. Okay.
Yep. Projections, again, we've discussed that. And then safety, making sure that the signs are being maintained, and that if it becomes a safety hazard, we have a mechanism where they can be removed. Then if we continue down on to number E here, signs prohibited in all districts, we have removed roof signs based on the discussions that we had. And then on the next page...
Well, at number 5, you have except for political signs in there.
Ooh.
Can we leave that in there? I thought that's one of the things we couldn't specifically... Temporary signs mounted on trucks, vans, or other wheeled vehicles except for political signs. I just thought we could...
Yep, so we're going to cross out that except for political signs. And, when we're talking about signs on trucks, if the truck is being used as part of the business and it's parked in a legal parking spot, it complies with the ordinance. Mm-hmm. What this is talking about is that if you have perpendicular parking spaces to the road and then you park your car parallel, it's no longer in a legal parking spot, right? Mm-hmm. So that type of sign is not permitted. But as long as it's an operational vehicle in a parking spot, it can be in your front yard,
Does that cover, but I did have a question on when you're talking about the signs on vehicles. Can we prohibit companies that strictly do the signs, on a truck for a different company that doesn't exist? Is that something we can, or is that protected? So, in other words, you don't see them as much now, but you still see where they'll have a truck with the long beam on the back, and they'll have a maybe 15 by 20 sign on the back of it advertising something.
So if they stop and are parked and are not parked in a legal parking spot, you would have the ability to tell them to move.
So all right, so that would fall under not just illegal parking, but the fact that the sign isn't allowed in that.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's it.
Then on the next page, we start talking about the temporary signs, and we've broken it up by zoning district. And again, this is based on the discussion that we had. So talking about banner signs being allowed for non-residential uses, and then in our non-residential zoning districts. Same for flags, for on-premise commercial, which doesn't include the American flag. That's exempt from this. Then we talk about yard signs, non-commercial yard signs on-premise, and then yard signs off-premise. And those are essentially your non-commercial signs for yard signs are replacing the political signs. And then your yard signs on-premise are taking the place of your for sale signs. And then you have your off-premise signs, which are intended for, if you have your window company put a sign down for a short period of time.
Do you know where the asterisk refers to? 'Cause I assume it's nothing important, but
Which one?
under the sign types, 3 of the 4 have asterisks after them, 3 of the 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see
Yep.
what they were referred to.
So that's a great question. That is an artifact from a previous draft.
Okay.
And so as we've gone through, I've simplified some of the language in here from where I originally started out with, our best practices draft. And some of that stuff just wasn't necessary. So I pulled that out, didn't remove those asterisks. And so you'll see the cross-outs on the bottom of the page and the next page. That's been incorporated into the chart.
Okay. I just had a question on the, was it 15%? Is that what we came up on the window coverage? What's
It's
that?
coming up. It's
Right.
coming up someplace through here.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure.
Yeah. So it's in the bottom of the chart there
Yeah.
for window signs.
Oh,
on
yeah, there's one.
Yep.
I guess I go back to the last question on that 15%. How, when you're looking at other areas, how does that fit in? Does it other municipalities?
So it's like in the middle. You see
In the
between
middle, okay.
10 and 20.
All right.
Yeah. So I guess.
Well, I guess, the way I'm looking at it is we don't want something, personally, I'm thinking when you're looking at this, you don't want to have something that sticks way out there that's going to be challenged quickly.
Right.
You
My
want something
question
that
always-
fits into the,
And I don't know how much we want to get into this, but is that of the window that sign is in, or is it all the windows in the buildings, or
Yeah.
is it some combination of that? Because it could make a big difference. 15% of the whole windows in the whole building could be much different than 15% of the
One
window the
window,
sign is
right.
actually in. And how do you define, like here I can look at, there's what I consider one window, but there's actually 2 panes to it.
Mhm.
But could you put a sign on each window?
Yeah.
15% of each window.
Yeah. Well, we're not defining it. I'm not sure we want to, but
Yeah.
Right.
that's where you can get into questions of how you're defining.
I'm just curious on enforcement, when you say that, because that's exactly what I would argue, look, it's only that so much of that window.
I still think it's silly to even put that in here. If you're going to put signs your windows, you're going to. I don't think it's a major, unless it's something to do with health, or so run in the door because you can't see the person on the other side or something. I don't see any reason.
Well,
why we're doing it.
that is the reason why that started. Whether or not it's still valid or not, right? Because it was intended that as the beat officer is doing his rounds, he can look into a building, right? It's not really realistic these days with the development practices and just the reality of the situation. But that's what started that requirement back in the day.
Do we really want that in there? Because to me, it's ambiguous. It doesn't. I don't see how we'd probably be actively enforcing it anyway. I like to get rid of the things that aren't going to be enforced anyway, or are going to be confusing to people. And is there a big problem that this is generating? If there's a problem that's solving, then yeah, we want to leave it in there. But is there a really problem, or are we making a problem?
I think the problem is that without having something, then you'll have the people who go overboard, and then you start thinking about clutter, and I think you have an issue with a liquor store, possibly party store, where they're 100% covered.
Right.
And that's, probably excessive, but, getting back to, the goal is remove clutter.
And protect the character and
Right.
rural characteristics of Holly Township.
Is that safety? Is that protecting people?
Well, it's protecting the rural characteristics, yeah, I think.
It's allowing the police visibility into the building
Yeah.
if they drive by. And
I could understand that a little bit, but I'm not sure that's a major issue nowadays.
I don't know, I go just on the trashy look, no matter where you're at,
how many Bud
rural
Light,
or
how
not.
many
It's
Bud
just
Light
kind of
signs do they need in a row
Right.
to say they're selling Bud Light?
I mean,
I tend to be with Glenn. You kind of the enforcement. I'm kind of difficult. My biggest concern is that if we do have someone enforce it, that we're not so far outside of parameters that it's going to be easy pickings to go after us about it. That's all. you know, that's what I was thinking when I was saying about the percentage-wise, how
Yeah.
we fit in with everybody else, so they can't say, well, you really are picking on me because at this point, that's one thing I found with the ordinance as a whole, had to kind of take a look and think ahead, because a lot of this doesn't apply, because we don't have a lot of stuff around here that that the ordinance applies to right now, but it will, most likely in the future. And I'm just afraid right now the gentleman over there at Fish Lake and Grange Hall might feel like he's picked on, because he could honestly point and say, where else in the township do you have, could this rule be applied to? So
Well,
I gotta want to make sure that it's, right in the middle with everything else. So if
could
something
we and we can we retroactively enforce on him if we pass this, or is he going to be grandfathered, barring putting new signage up?
So
yeah, that's a good question.
the question, right? It's because of the type of signs these are. These typically aren't signs that are just left in there for his business type. I don't know specifically, what his business plan is, but typically they're advertising sales, and sales end. And when they end, you remove the sign, and then you are removing your grandfather. You're no longer legal non-conforming. When you put the new sign up, you're just non-conforming.
So in other words, if there was a permanent sign in there and he had it in there now, we could probably do nothing about it.
Right. So
But
if he had like a painted sign on there with a store name and like a mural or something that's just there, that's an obvious grandfather, legal non-conforming situation. But your
But,
4th of July sale is over, right? And so he's going to pull that down and put up Labor Day next.
Right. I guess that's what I was getting back to, what I was saying about got to look into the future, because if I was looking right now, I'd look and say, most of this doesn't really apply to anything that we have, but we need it for going forward. And I guess, that's going to be one of that. This one with that percentage is going to be a little tricky right now, because we only have one business that it really fits.
But we don't know
It
what's.
might be one of those you might have a nice little talk to and say, hey, we got this, could we work,
Yeah.
together on. But I guess that's the only thing I could say is that, I've had to look at this from the perspective that, looking at it right now, there's a lot of this you could say we don't need, but we will in the future. So I guess that's, going forward, that's the way I'm looking at it.
I mean, something's going to come out of that corner of Fish Lake and
Right.
and Grange Hall now that the township has sold the property so that they can merge. We don't know what it is yet, as far as I know,
No.
but could be anything.
Right. Well, that was I didn't mean to open a can of worms there.
No, it's good, and I don't think code enforcement's going to go out there with a tape measure and measure 15% versus 17%. It's when somebody decides to turn their business into something that looks like a NASCAR car,
Right.
that will have that hammer to say, look, here's what the ordinance says. Let's dial it back.
So currently in the sign ordinance, it allows 10%. Right? It says window signs, provided that the signs do not exceed more than 10% of the window area in which they are displayed. So now we're moving to 15%. So we're actually
Increasing.
Right.
But it's still pretty small
Yeah.
for a window. I mean, it's not giving them much room. What if he did 50% or something?
It seems more reasonable to me that it's a larger percentage. 'Cause
Yeah.
if you only have one window and
Right.
you only have one place to display, 15% is not
Not
very
gonna-
much space.
You're going to have an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper.
But you're saying typically 10 to 20% is what most communities do?
Correct. And the issues with party stores, that's across the board. That's every community has issues with party stores.
Sure.
Other issues can be car dealerships. Depending on how far off the road they are. Some have temporary paint, for sale. Each window has a different letter.
Grocery stores used to do that, and I don't think many do now. They used to
Mm.
give us signs
But-
that change every week.
But those are usually the two types of businesses that you have.
Did you see in any of the other ordinances? Did you see anything? The reason why they did it, say that it was for safety reasons? Because I know Hazel Park. I ran a Family Dollar store in Hazel Park, and when we built our new store, they told us this is you can have signs, but we got to be able to see in the safety factor, and it's like Not that it did us a lot of good, but it was. But that was the reasoning behind it was safety. There was no, they never in their ordinance it didn't really imply that it was a matter of sight, although it did look a lot better without a lot of signs in it. But they came through and said, "Here's the ordinance. It says it's safety, and that's the reason why we're doing it." So
Right,
I
yeah.
didn't know if anybody locally did the same or if it
So,
was all strictly sight.
Locally, so Grand Blanc, we, safety is what we used to say. I'm sure now they say both safety and character.
Okay.
Trying to think, Ortonville, say for safety
Okay.
and character.
Right.
Those are the two communities that I've worked in, that are close by. I don't remember off the top of my head what Groveland has. I know that their sign ordinance is very minimal.
Right.
You know.
Same thing.
Right.
I was saying not much there. Does it? Right.
What about fast food restaurants? They put those signs they fill the whole window, every window, and change them every month or whatever. They won't be able to do that.
Yeah, so again, right? They'd be allowed to do 15% of the window.
Right.
Let's go with 50%. I don't think it's a big issue anyway.
Yeah.
I would not be in favor of that. I mean, if 10 to 20 is the accepted median in most places, I don't see why we ought to up that by such a large amount. I mean, I could meet you possibly at 20%.
How about 30?
We say we're trying to be business friendly.
But
let them change the attitude about the township.
But if every other, if most, I don't say every, but if most other communities are in the 10 to 20% range, then I don't see us being any less friendly to business than they would be. In fact, if we were at 20, we'd be on the high end of some. That's my opinion.
My guess this is not enforced any place to any great extent.
Right.
Well, they do. I know they do in Farmington Hills. I don't know what their percentage is, but and now granted they've got more staff, but
some communities, they wait until all right, it's this time of year. We send out the letters to remind everyone. We give them, X amount of days to comply, and then we inspect. As opposed to, just driving around. All right, you're it.
so the intent there is not to fine and cite people; it's to educate them and give them an opportunity to.
I think always the intent is to bring compliance.
Right.
Nobody wants to write tickets.
Right.
It just, in all honesty, causes more work for everyone than it's really worth.
AC, you've been
I
quiet.
think we should leave it where it is. 15%.
Pat,
I'd say at the most 20, maybe 25%. Then you're giving them a quarter of it. That's like I'd like to see added in there. Unless I didn't catch it, I'd like to add it in there also for safety. That this is
A reason for the
right?
Yeah, reason for it, safety, because I would say 25% wouldn't be extravagant. I think it would be a little bit more. And to be honest with you, when you're thinking about size-wise of posters and that, probably that 25% is going to fit in more to the size of a poster than that 15%. I don't know. When they're looking at posters in a window and that, they're not looking at 10%. They're not looking at 15%. They're looking at a poster that's probably 25%. Can I fill half the window up? Can I get 2 posters in there? Whatever,
Well, that goes back to the question: are we talking about 25% per window, or are we talking 25% of the entirety? Because if a business has 6 windows, in theory, they could cover one of them, even at 15%.
If it's that ambiguous right now, then maybe we should figure that out. That it should say definitely.
Yeah.
Do we have to change the Bronco?
Right there.
What's that?
That's 50% of that paint right there.
That's about 15%. Yeah.
No, he says 50%.
Well,
Together, it's probably
oh, the 2 signs. Yep.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
25% is probably still not talking about a lot there,
So the way the ordinance reads today, right, provided the sign does not exceed more than 10% of the window area in which they are displayed. So I would interpret that as the individual window,
Okay.
not the full total number of windows.
Well, I think it should state clearly that it should be either, like you said, the window, and that's, make sure that's made clear that
So
it's each
I
window.
think last
or-
time you guys talked, it was total window area, not
Right.
individual area. So
Well, one way or the other. I mean, I'm not, at this point, I'm not saying what it should be, but it should, it shouldn't be left in between for someone to guess, and the code enforcer saying, well, I think it means this, and, the store owner saying, I think it means this, Should be just very straightforward. It's either the whole, and I think you would probably be better off doing it per window, because like he just demonstrated, you could tell that a little bit better than someone measuring every single window in the place. I mean, it's like, because you could, someone could sit there and like say, yeah, I got one whole window covered here, but I got this whole building that I don't have any others on.
Right.
But we could say that one window is not helping us out for safety reasons.
Correct.
And it looks bad. It's like that. So I'd rather have it smaller on more windows than larger on one window. It's like, because if you think about it, you could cover a complete window. And you say, well, it doesn't cover all 25% of all my windows, just 100% of one window.
The
Right.
business
Yeah.
owners,
Go back to safety. You can see the Bronco over there. You can see through that Bronco.
Right.
So even
Yeah.
a sign doesn't necessarily cover the window. It doesn't necessarily block everything.
Right.
It can, but
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily block the whole view.
No.
as a business owner, they're probably going to want to put all their signage in one or two windows.
Right.
If they have the raw windows like that, they're not going to put 15% in each one. Nobody can see it.
Right.
They're going to put a couple of big ones in and leave the rest empty.
So would you
So
say?
we
go
can't
totally.
restrict that. Yeah.
So would you go for the whole window space
I think so. Let them
for all the window space?
fit it in accordingly.
I would myself I would go with 20% of the entire window coverage. To me, that allows a business owner to put, if they want to, one or two, if they've got a bunch of windows, one or two giant signs up to get everybody's attention without it being, as much as I love hockey, I don't want to see something look like the dasher boards, from, corner to
So
corner.
probably has some more important things. So could we go 20% of total window area? Is that
Yeah.
agreeable?
That
Are we good there?
That sounds good.
AC, can you live with that?
20%.
I'm going to stick with 15.
Well,
Lloyd, what do you think?
Well, if he's going to do 15, I'll do 25.
I like the compromise there. I can make a motion then, or
Yeah, well, go.
If you can just,
Oh, just make it.
general consensus.
okay, Jen.
'Cause- So we still have to do we have to do a public hearing
Right,
first,
right.
right? So this is not the last time
Right.
we're going to talk about this.
So how about you scratch that in, and we'll see if we.
So
Stacy
I-
comes and she can persuade
So I
us
have it.
otherwise. How's
I
that?
have it scratched in as 20%. Add a statement for safety purposes, and then that 20% is for the total window area.
Yeah,
Sounds good, yeah.
Yep.
All right.
let's give it some thought with that, and
Okay.
on to the next thing.
All right.
All right. I'm just saying here, just now, all right. All right. We talked about the crossed out. It's included in there. So now, if we're under permitted freestanding signs,
Oh, we will skip. About number 9 on this page before that.
Number 9.
okay?
What's the idea with a single band of one color? Why are we restricting your open or closed sign to a
Right
single
here.
band of one color? I'm puzzled at why it's important for that.
Well, first of all, that's what it says right now.
So it wasn't
So-
changed. Okay.
So I
Someone
guess
like a certain color or something. That's what I was like. Okay.
So I would say this is intended to be limited in scope, right? So when we're looking at open or closed, the ordinance is trying to get across a quick message, non-advertising message.
Why don't you put that in there?
Limit to
Open and close
Just see,
sign
like
with no
extra words that aren't
advertising.
necessary that aren't going to be
Right.
dealt with.
I couldn't really, beyond that, I couldn't defend the city.
Yeah.
It's just what's in typically, and
Right.
well, we can get rid of it.
So-
Oh,
Somebody
okay.
else
Sign
will.
says limited to word open or close. That kind of eliminates the
Yeah.
advertising.
Yeah.
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 I'm good- I'm good
I
with
think
it.
you could strike the rest of that as
Yeah.
pretty.
What about flashing or non-flashing of that sign? Is that covered anywhere?
I think
Yes.
Yeah,
coming
that's
out.
coming
out.
Somewhere else?
I think we already. Yeah. So on the previous 2 pages, signs prohibited in all districts. Number 2, signs containing flashing, intermittent, or moving lights.
Okay.
That's going to become number 1.
Okay.
So that's.
Oh, okay.
I still had one more thing there, but it probably is more. The miscellaneous removal or spraying of foliage with herbicides right of way. We could prevent that. Seems to me if you have a sign that's very important, that it's noticeable and not obstructed. And how are we policing that they can't mow the grass or something in front of their signs? For one thing, in the right of way, you're supposed to maintain those in most cases.
Right. The county even maintains some of those. They come by and cut.
I know there's big to do on I-75 with people. Somebody cutting trees in
Right.
front of their
Yeah.
signs that are
Right.
supposedly
Yeah.
their own signs that,
Right.
and they weren't supposed to, but you know they've got a lot of money invested in signs
Yeah.
so that nobody can see.
Right.
What would be the reason why I mean, other than we probably would wish they wouldn't use herbicide, but if they were getting rid of weeds and not around their sign, what would that? I don't see how that's an issue.
Yeah,
it's
to
like,
me
you
it's just
know,
extra words that we don't need.
yeah, it's like that's just one of those.
Is it a safety issue for chemical runoff?
I've never.
It's the only thing I can think of is that if they're concerned about chemicals going down in the drainage systems right off the edge of the road kind of thing. That's me being the
It's a
environmentalist.
long
I'm being
ways
worried.
to go to that. Can we just get rid of that?
some more research.
Again, we can revisit it if you find some major reason why we need to have it. But
I'll be
just-
honest with you. This is not something that I typically see in sign ordinances, so I don't have a ready-made, answer for why it would be in there.
I mean, if there was that much of a problem that you had to come in front of the planning commission, it sounds like something our invasive species. That's
Right.
what it
Well,
sounds
yeah,
like. That
yeah.
would be more appropriate for that.
That
than-
part I can understand, right?
Right.
Because part of your site plan includes the landscape plan,
Right.
and if they're going to start altering the approved plan, then I could see them having to come in front of the planning commission, right? Because
Right.
now their landscape plan is no longer valid. But just removing weeds,
Yeah, I mean that's
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
because you could actually have someone that says, "Hey, look, the reason why I didn't cut the weeds around that sign was because
It's
you
your
said I'm
ordinance,
not
huh?
supposed to." You
It's
know?
excited for not cutting the weeds down.
Yeah, right.
See, I couldn't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would just take it.
I think
out.
we're good with making that go away.
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
All right, now I'm ready to turn the page.
All right.
Now that you've shredded that one.
Got rid of a couple of things.
All right, so the first thing I have on here is freestanding sign shall not be located in a public road or right of way, and shall be set back a distance equal to the height of the sign from all of the property boundaries. So what this allows you to do is, as opposed to now is having to be 15 feet back from the road right of way, you can be on the road right of way on your property, right? But then, depending on how tall the sign is, you have to be that far off your side yard lines, right? And again, that gets back to your clear vision. Setbacks, etc.
And if it falls down, it's falling down on your property and not somebody else's or the
Correct.
road.
Okay, 6 I have a problem with.
Okay.
I think it should be suggested that it has street number on the property, but my own example is I own property on North Holly Road, but there's no address for North Holly Road. So if I had to put an address on it, it wouldn't have North Holly Road, it would have a different address. And it would have to be my home address because even though I have electricity and there's a street address, it's not acknowledged by anybody other than Consumers Energy. So if I put an address on there, it would be my house address that's a quarter mile away from that. It doesn't make sense. I know it's suggested, and I'm probably the one that would say that it bothers me that more people don't have addresses on their signs,
Mhm.
but specifically put in there, I think it just should be highly suggested or something, not as a requirement. which I think it would be based on this.
Because what if a business wanted to put it on one side of their business, and they figured a sign on the other side didn't make sense, but that's their address side, so they're putting an address on the side where they have their sign, you know.
It just says must, and I just
Right,
think it
I
should
know.
be suggested, or
Suggested.
highly recommended, or I don't know what the wording, because these are mostly required things, but
Yeah, I don't know. Can you actually recommend something within an ordinance?
Glenn, what would your freestanding sign, what does it say?
Come by my
If it-
plants.
yeah, it would be, we're open, or
Yeah.
you know, and what's we have a
The
sale,
name
or
of the
something.
company?
Mitchell
no
Farm,
address?
yeah.
Yeah. Plant sale or things like that.
I'm just thinking if you made, you know, I could put Holly Road on there, but there's no street address by that. There's no street address for even Mitchell Road on my until you get to my house. Except for Consumers Energy. I have a power there, so I actually do have an address, but it's not acknowledged by the mail service or anything else.
Could I Google your?
Yeah.
the
You can
actual-
try, but as
Would
long
I
as
end
I
up
know,
with
you
your
get my
home
house
address?
address is the only thing you
Your
get.
house
Or
address.
you get something that's 3/4 of a mile from our market, which I'm not sure how it shows up when you
Pardon
Google
me,
it.
may I interject?
Yes, sir.
Would you like me to stop the microphone?
Please do, sir.
Terry Connell, 408 Oakland Street. Is the possibility that the address being affixed to a business to help emergency services locate in the event of a
Yes.
fire or medical emergency?
Yeah, that's part of it.
So would that be to assist? Is that the requirement?
That's
I mean-
part of it.
But
How,
see,
how right now, if you got a call for if somebody was driving by and they saw a fire at
Corner
your
of Mitchell
property?
North Holland Road.
Yeah, I know everybody knows that, but the new guy in the
Yeah.
fire truck doesn't.
But there's no address there. I've been
There's no
working on
address.
it, but I have no address there. I have Consumers Energy, because I have electricity there, has an address. But it doesn't show up to post office, doesn't show up. I tried to get the post office to acknowledge it, but it's right. I don't think they have, so. So I have to use my house address, so they come to my house and then have to go back to the corner.
Would I be right in saying your situation is
It's
pretty unique?
It could
So-
be unique. But there are, you know, where there's businesses that front more than one roadway too,
Mm-hmm.
and your address could be on the different road than where you're actually people would access it from.
Could there be some kind of language put in there stating if the sign is on your address side of your property, that it must be on there?
We're making too much of this, but
You know,
I just
I-
thought it should
yeah.
be recommended, but not must.
So I have a vague memory that there's something in the building code that's similar to this. So why don't I check that? And I understand the discussion that we had. So I'll have.
It's not going to happen very often, and it should be where they have addresses on.
So I can check the building code to see what that states, because I believe either in the building code or the fire code itself
Probably the fire code,
that there is a requirement
For an address?
for an
Yeah.
address. And so if there is, then we'll just mirror whatever that language is. If there's not, we'll loosen that up just a tiny bit, but not make.
It should be. You know, they should have addresses on there in most cases.
All right. Any other comments for that page?
Very last one, to be a commercial highway sign, where I-75 does touch a lot of Holly Township, you'd have to be commercial to be able to have a sign on your property,
Mm-hmm.
which means that virtually nobody would be able to have signs in Holly Township because nothing's zoned commercial on I-75, isn't it?
I would believe that's correct.
You probably can't add anything anyway because they probably don't allow it, but that
Right.
seems tighter than it should be for.
So I think
There are already
I think there's
signs there.
I think there's a couple of comments on that. I think one, it's by design to limit the number of billboards, and then two, just the spacing requirements that the state requires for new billboards is like 1,500 feet on the same side, 1,000 feet on opposite sides.
Something like that.
So once you start getting those distances, that
There wasn't any room, was there?
that I believe, right, with that last one that went up, that
Yeah.
sort of closed the door on the number of billboards in the township.
I think when we dealt with that, the lighted one that we approved, I think that was some of the discussion we had, is that they're really, correct me if
Because
I'm
of
wrong,
the
guys.
space alignment.
Yeah, that was basically going to be it, unless one of the existing ones
It's
came
it's
down.
not going to happen very often.
Yeah.
And they probably could get an exception or something, but it just seems strange that load because we don't have
So,
commercial property along
in the
property.
planning profession, there's a lot of discussion on billboards, and
Yep.
you know how, you know, the appearances and how it fits in with community character and where they should go. So there's a philosophy that some planners have to limit the number of billboards, you know,
Not eliminate is probably the word.
or eliminate, you know.
That's close to it. I notice when I travel, though, I like billboards to know what things are coming up. And you go to some places that have no billboards, you go, I have no idea where I'm at or what I'm doing. But then you also run when there's way too many.
Right.
So
And that's sort
a
of
happy
why
medium is where you like to have it, and it's
I
either one
carry
way or
my
the other.
personal preference and then my professional opinion, right? So, you know,
But we need to move on. That probably won't have any effect on anything. So just as a comment.
all right, then moving on to permitted wall signs. And again, we're not recommending any changes for the wall signs until we get to the non-residential uses where, what are we talking about here? We increased the height to 4 feet from 2 feet.
Well, the wall signs. So I had questions on this. Number 1 and A and E seem to kind of contradict or say similar but not quite the same things about protruding 12 inches on E, and the other one says it can't extend above or beyond the ends of the wall. Maybe but it just seems like it's
So
still the
when
same
you think
issue.
about the brackets that are being used
Yeah.
to attach it to the face of the wall,
Yeah.
and saying that it can only, the brackets can only be
Oh, when you say
projected.
protrude, you're saying away from the wall. Then.
Right.
I was thinking it was beyond the wall. Okay, so that's what the definition of protrude. And then F, wall signs shall face a public street or parking lot side of the building. Why are we designating where they can put their signs? Aren't they going to put it where it's necessary for people to see it? Why would we be telling that's the only places they could put them?
So one reason would be if it is facing a residential home without a public entrance, so that to limit the disturbance that you would have.
Mm-hmm.
The business owner is going to put it where it's going to be visible.
Yeah.
I don't
Hopefully.
see why we're restricting it to. Why we even have that? It just doesn't make sense to me.
I think for the sake of uniformity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the business owner's going to want to put it where it's the most effective.
Yeah, they're not going to
People
put it
can
where.
see it. Yeah.
I think that should just be gone out of there. As far as I don't think it's making a lot of difference, but it's just unnecessary.
I think that one needs to stay only because if somebody does something that you and I might think wouldn't make sense as a business owner, but it does impact the character and the people around them, that we need to be able to have the ability to
And so, you know, one of the things to remember, and we'll get to it at the end of the ordinance, is we've changed the way signs can be approved also, right? We've introduced this waiver mechanism so that when they come in for site plan approval, if they know what their signs are going to look like, you can just approve it, right, without going additional meetings or anything. So, you know, I think that this is a rare situation that would come up, but
That's
if
why
it's during the development phase, there's no issue because we'll handle it with you guys and we can justify the reason. Otherwise, they can still go in front of the zoning board of appeals if that's really what they need to do. And again, they can justify the reason.
My thing is to keep it simple so these things are more enforceable and so people can understand them better. You start putting stuff like in, it clutters it up as far as I'm concerned. No business owner is going to put it where nobody's going to see it. Say in the parking lot side, if your parking lot's in the back of the building, you might as well say you can't have a sign there. Hopefully you have someplace else, but it just seems unnecessary to me to have that in there. I don't see it being safety, and usually you're not going to be next to residential anyway if you're following other issues, or the other regulations.
comments.
I like it. I think you can have a sign. You don't know what the business is next to your building, and that sign could be offensive to the building next to yours if it's there.
And since we can't regulate content,
So you put up a different kind of sign. This
Yeah.
is wall signs. It's just one type of sign is we're restricting.
Pat,
No comment.
does that mean leave it, or you're okay with leaving?
I'm fine with what it is right now.
Lloyd?
I think we need to simplify things, and I don't think we need that. You got to give the business owner some opportunity to do
Again,
business.
the more things you put in here, the more complicated it is, the more it's just a barrier for businesses a lot of times.
Is this a typical language in a sign ordinance?
Sure. Yes, it is. You know, and I think I've only had to deal with someone seeking a variance for that once, and
So why have it in there if it's not going to be an issue more than once out of 20 years?
well, I that is a valid point of view. I think the other is it's in there to prevent. Sometimes you know you have to save businesses from themselves, and you know again getting back to the character of the community. You know you have this building and the sign is in a untraditional place. You know how does that deal with their visibility for the driver and the safety?
Give us an example of what your situation was, the variance. What were they trying to do?
It was in Walled Lake, and it was a corner lot, but interior to a parking lot where the sign wasn't actually facing the parking lot itself, and it was like the third side to a building, and so it wasn't on the corner, so technically, right, because it was an interior drive within a outdoor mall, and so that side was visible to people who were driving, but from the ordinance standpoint, there was no door, there was no parking, and it's like the only situation where we've had where it was like it was visible from three sides from a public road. Actually, it was visible. All four sides of the building were visible, you know, as you go through the mall.
So what was the result of
They
that?
approved it.
Years ago, I ran a bar in Lincoln Park, and the owner previously to it thought it would be great to have neon sign on the front, neon sign on the side, and neon sign on the back. Well, the back sign basically saved him on putting lighting in because it lit up the parking lot when I had it turned on. But it did go out into the residential area that was behind the bar, and although I looked like a good guy because I cut it off after a while, in reality it was because of the cost. It wasn't really the I had to get it repaired, and I decided not to. So I have seen that, and to me it made no sense other than he didn't have to put in parking lights. I don't know, but it was an ugly sign, and it did take up three sides of the building, and I'm going to assume nobody ever gave me any hassles about it, so I'm going to assume it was allowed, and I can assure you the neighbors behind it were very grateful when so they said, oh, well, you turned it off because of our complaints we've made over the years. I said, no, but if that's what you want to think, go right ahead. But I have seen that where businesses, and used to be a business in Pontiac not too far from the Silverdome, where there was a triangle building, and they had the signs all the way around it. And it was great. You could see it was lit up from everywhere, but the back sign didn't do anything. I mean, other than it was there, I suppose that someone built somewhere else on there. I think it's one of those rare occasions you're even going to have anybody really do it, but when it does happen, you don't want it to happen.
You might think the parking lot side could be the residential side.
It could be.
Roadway could be the residential side. So
it could
to me,
be.
it's just unnecessary. It's just one more complication in our list of signs.
I don't see it as a major complication myself. I think it's one of those. It's all right. I was trying to get a picture, see if I could show you a picture of the one I was. I can't seem to pull that up, but it's just one of those things where people will push, and that's what I worry about. Is that you say, well, it's complicated, but most businesses are going to look and say that doesn't even have any effect on me. But you might stop that one or two does go overboard. That's the way I look at it.
And by the same token, if somebody has a legitimate reason for doing it,
they could
they
come
have
in
a
front.
mechanism.
Right, it's
They
not
have,
a-
and that's what we've got to keep remembering.
Takes
Is
more
that,
steps, so
oh, sure.
more time, more money,
More fees.
more fees. Yes.
No, there wouldn't be more fee because we don't forget, guys, the way we're doing this. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. It would just be part of their site plan approval. They're going to pay the same fee that they're going to have to pay to come before us in the first place, and we will have the ability to grant them the approval. They're not going to have to go to.
Unless they add a sign later, then they would still.
Well,
But then again, they would have to come in front of them no matter what.
Yeah.
They'd, it's not one of, they couldn't avoid coming in front of the planning commission. Anyhow, they would have to.
It's not worth fighting over, but it just seems unnecessary. I've done with that page.
All right.
I didn't know if you were going to go over this or not, but there was one on issues with murals and
Mhm.
stating that you can. Would that also? It says you couldn't have any commercial, couldn't sign. If you had a business who sponsored that mural and they put their name up on there, would that be considered a sign? Would that be in violation? That only comes to mind because we've had a couple of murals go up in the village here, and I don't know what their rules are, but I didn't notice anything on it. But if you had a good sized mural and someone supplied the paint or whatever, and they put the name of the person or company that provided it, would that be considered a violation?
So the way our murals work, basically it takes the two different aspects of a mural. The commercial aspect, if you want to include your company name in it, that's counted towards however much wall signage you could have.
Okay.
The rest of the image, would not, right? That would fall under the rest of the
Artistic
standard
and
for a mural.
okay. So if someone did something artistic and over in the corner there was this company did it, that's their sign over there, and the rest of the mural isn't counted as their sign.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, objection number 2 on the murals, where you have only one wall, facade, or surface of a building or structure may be used for mural. Why are we restricted to one?
So
Some murals follow the whole building. It's, I think wasn't it Chrysler? Their whole building was the mural basically. In Detroit, there's several of them that use the whole thing.
I think it comes back again to the whole character
Right.
of
But
the
allow
community.
it. What difference makes it with 1 or 2 sides,
Well,
or 3 sides? 4
Again,
sides?
it's character of the community. As far as do we want?
Well, you have also
I-
down here. It has to create an aesthetically pleasing amenity.
Well,
Which I wonder who,
then I guess you
who
would
gets
wanna
to that
Find
one.
that.
Then I guess we're restricting the mural to one wall and saying it better be aesthetically. That's one that you see in just about all the communities, though. I don't see any of them where they allow more than one wall, or if they do, it's 2 opposite sides.
Yeah.
They don't let them wrap around or anything like that.
murals have sort of taken on a new renaissance.
They're everywhere.
Right? But where for a long time communities were saying no, we don't want it because it's the line between graffiti and painted mural. How do you regulate that, right? But now I think communities are taking the opposite approach. It's placemaking. It improves the appearance of buildings. So there's sort of going back to the previous way. And so, limiting it to one wall, that's, if you consider where things used to be, one wall is actually an improvement. Obviously, this is what's in the ordinance right now.
Again, if somebody wanted to paint a 2-sided mural and could demonstrate that it was not going to be gaudy and make things look not what we would want them to, they could again make that case before us.
I guess when I was looking in there, when you're saying about enhancing or covering up like defects in the building and that, I guess that's when I'm thinking of the murals, or not. A lot of times they're looking at it as a temporary thing, or looking at it as something or an old building that they just don't want to put the money into redoing
Right.
the side and that. So, we're not looking a mural for the whole building. I suppose I've seen it. There's one on 7 and Woodward where they did the whole building, but it's also covering up a mess of a building too. So that's.
So the only thing you do is build round buildings. You only have one side.
Right. Yeah, like I said, my only concern on that is that if someone, they could do something and give some credit to somebody that might have helped them. That was my own. Other than that, I didn't have any other problems with the wording on that, I should say.
I think one of the things with murals is that they deteriorate
That's true.
quicker than most signs, so
Yep.
they need to maintain them.
Right.
After they start cracking and pieces fall off,
Yeah.
it's not
It
attractive.
happens
anymore.
pretty quickly too. I
Yeah.
mean, unless even with high quality paint, there's only so much you can do on brick.
Right.
I mean, as it states in the wording in here, it's kind of one of those things covering up defects and stuff like that. So it's not, I'd be afraid if you allowed them to do the whole building, they'd be thinking, well, that fixes the building for X amount of years. And it's like, yeah, I don't want to encourage that. I'd rather see the building improved,
Right.
So. Don't you just love us? We find all the little detailed things.
But I still, who's going to figure out whether it's pleasing or not? I want to know who's the one that's going to determine that.
East Point went around for quite a few years about a mural on
Well, yeah.
whether
we get
it
something
was
controversial.
acceptable or not. So.
Acceptable to the public, probably in that case.
It could be a good public focal point,
It might unite the whole community.
Right. Oh no, our planners found something we missed.
Oh, no.
Is that for murals?
So
or-
when you actually are reviewing a mural, right, as a special land use, because that's how this states, the standards that you're actually granting upon, the placing of the proposed mural and the location selected by the applicant would not constitute a significant traffic safety hazard. Neither the mural nor the placement of the mural would endanger the public health, safety, or general welfare, and neither the mural nor the placement of the mural would be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other properties in the immediate area. So when you actually get down to the standards for the special land use itself, it focuses on, the health, safety, welfare, and not the content of the mural. But this goes, talks more about the recommendations, right? So which is similar to what we're talking about for the street address.
Okay, that's something now. Just raise another point on that. If someone were to put, especially in our township, would be more likely you're going to see it, a mural on a barn. Now, if there was say they put a car, a Mustang or something on that, is that protected under their free? There would be no challenge that, well, hey, I could consider that a commercial for a Mustang.
Is it facing the parking lot or the street?
Well, if they're not in the car business,
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying,
then it wouldn't be an advertisement.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So if it's on
it would be considered work of art. That's,
personal
that's,
property,
that's most likely what we're going to see for the near future. I'd say would be any kind of murals are going to be on private property and probably going to be on barns or a house possibly, but nothing that.
I would agree with your statement there. That would not fall under what this is anticipating.
Only because I just saw one recently where they did a Dodge Ram, and I thought it was a commercial on the side of it until I realized, oh, he's got a Dodge Ram that looks exactly like that one on this
Here in Holland.
barn. Yeah. No, this one was down near Adrian.
Are we done with murals then? Or?
And we're done with murals.
On page 4, under electronic message signs, it's in red D towards the bottom of the page. Do you have back in that closer to 15 feet from the road? I thought we were taking that out of the. That's in the first paragraph under electronic message signs.
If I remember correctly, we kept it in there for electronic message signs, just because of the nature of the sign itself.
You still have the same issue. I think that George was trying to show you. That some places you couldn't possibly put a sign if it's from the road right away.
Well, but I think that's a great case for them to come before us and ask for a variance, because lighted electronic signs, perfect example is that one on North Holly Road, the party store, and it's a beautiful sign, and that place has done a great job of cleaning that place up. But the brightness, and it's not even too close to the road, but the brightness and the flashing that goes on there, it's a distraction to drivers.
I would bet you that's within 15 feet of them. Right?
It might be, and the
Well
village
within that.
the village has. I mean, I don't know offhand what the village standard is.
If something like that, because I know I
Yeah.
have a problem in my office.
Yeah, but I would be concerned. I mean, if that thing was lower to the ground and even closer to the road than it is now, it's a hazard. It really is. And I mean, I have complained to the
So,
village that it's.
Glenn, I figured out what it is. I got my notes. So, if you are, at least what it's supposed to be, I don't know if it actually reads this way. So it's supposed to be that if you are less than 15 feet, you can have 20% of the sign be electronic changeable signage. If it is greater than 15 feet, then 100% of the sign can be.
Right. That's right.
Oh, so that's the, okay.
Yeah.
It does keep-
Right. So permissible one closer than 15 feet does not exceed 20%.
In the next thing under A, I didn't understand that a message can't change less than once per 1 hour
You
per
know,
sign.
that should be 1 minute.
Minute.
One
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I couldn't
Yeah.
figure out
Yeah.
what 1 hour meant.
Yep.
Right.
All right. That makes a little more sense. All right.
Some communities have it at an hour, and so when I originally copied it in here, that's why it's an hour.
Which is
Wait for it to
basically-
change to see what
Yeah.
you want to see. Just sit there a long time.
It's like the old hourglass on the Windows 95 machine. Just
The page before, and I think it was in there the same way. It's in the black under permitted portable temporary signs. We have a 14-day period for that. We have 30 days for some of the other temporary signs. Shouldn't that be consistent? Don't know where the 30 days, but I thought it was 4 30 days time periods for one set. Now we have 14-day period here.
What number is it?
It's 5E. We don't have page numbers, so it's really hard to see.
I'm gonna cheat over here.
6, I think.
It's under temporary event signs. Temporary portable permitted portable temporary signs is
Yeah, 5E.
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 But I thought before, and I didn't go back to look for it, but I thought we had 30 days for some of the temporary signs.
So for temporary event signs, we have 15 days, not to exceed 30 days total.
And then 4 times a year, wasn't it? I thought that's what I remembered reading, but I did go back and look for it. I just thought these should be consistent between the two, but because I think we're talking similar things, aren't we?
Right. All right,
Would
so
it-
I have a note to make sure that those are consistent
Okay.
with each other now.
Would you be? You're liking to see 30 or 14?
30.
30.
More than 30, but that's all you're going to give me. At most, I should say. That's all my notes, I think, now. And could I highly suggest, and I know it's difficult, but to number the pages?
Yeah, I
It's
definitely
very
will.
difficult
No,
when I flip
I-
pages.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure where I was at sometimes.
Yeah.
I
Right.
agree wholeheartedly.
And I know you might put it together at different times, but you could use ABC and 1, 2, 3, but at least you can tell, kind of where you're at some of the time. It's just very difficult. I know it's hard to do, but it's also hard to follow when you can't tell what page number you're on.
I agree. The next draft will definitely have page numbers.
Well, what's your thought that we should? I don't have a problem with 30.
34 times, but 4 times a year, so you're talking
Maybe.
120 days.
Yeah, maybe cut down on the number of times. That would be.
Yeah, because I think 120 days a year it becomes not quite permanent, but that's
You're getting half the year there.
Seasonal business is what you're looking for that don't want it, and you don't want to sign up all the year. That allows you to be at least flexible for them.
What's your thought? 14 you're with?
Yeah.
What did you say?
I'm fine with it.
The way it is? Okay. Pat?
Well, what if you... No, that wouldn't work. I was going to say, what if you made it 14, each permit 14, but didn't put a limit on how many times a year? So in other words, if you really wanted it for, 14 days, you're up, get the permit, get another permit for it. You want it for another 14 days. The only problem is, then I suppose you could say that's an unfair cost running for them, but how much does that run for a permit?
I don't know.
Yeah, see, that's something too. If it was a minimal cost, I wouldn't think twice about it. Just saying, you know what, you got to renew it every so many days. That way you keep control of, hey, the inspector went out there, your signs are all over the place, or they're in the right of way. Because personally, if you come back in, I think with limited resources, whether it's 14 days or 30 days, if you made them come back in to get a new permit for it, then that alerts the code enforcer, well, let me go take a look and see how you're doing with the signs you already have. If there's any kind of violations of it, it's taken care of then. So she's not out looking for issues, because, okay, Company A came in, they're getting a new permit, or you charge them once and you say, but you got to come and get it renewed. That way you kind of keep the enforcement.
But if you knew you were going to need that sign for us, that you'd actually go do them all at one time and pay for it at one time.
You could.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're going to run into where you get so busy you don't remember to come in, and then you're in violation of the thing. Businesses do get busy.
Lloyd, what do you think?
Well, I think 14 is too short. I think if we have another area where it says 30 days, why not be consistent? Why do we have to jump all over the board? And again, the business is trying to stay open, trying to do business. You need to be less restrictive and not more restrictive.
So what if we went 30 days, maximum of 90 days a year for a temporary? It's 3 months. I mean, typically a seasonal business, that's 3 months is a season.
That would be more straightforward than what I was speaking of. So yeah, that would.
Can we compromise and give that a shot?
All right, you got to make me. I have greenhouses, they're open 2 months, and then I have pumpkins, it's open 2 months. That's far more than that time period. So everybody's different, and,
Right.
and say that the seasonal business is only going to be less than that many days is kind of restrictive, I think.
What is 30 days in a whole year? It's not a big
No,
deal.
I said 30 days with a maximum of 90.
Right,
So you're
but
giving
another
people
30 days in that year
120
period.
days.
What's the difference? Another 30 days.
Well, then other than collecting the money, I'm just wondering what kind of real enforcement you could have on something like that, because then you're going to have multiple ones out there. It's like, okay, how long do I have to track this person for? 120 days out of the year. We don't have a ton of people doing
Right.
doing the enforcement. So then you're starting to get out there, and it's like, well, someone gets ragged towards the end of their 120 days on there, and it's like. But then again, going on the other side, they still have to come back in and get the permit. And I guess from that aspect, that you still, the township would still have the opportunity to say, are they, before we give you this permit, we're going to go out and look at it and see, make sure you're doing what you're saying you're doing, and it's in the proper
So Glenn, do
place.
you put out the same sign all the time? Or is it
Basically the same sign, just says different things.
you do it every year, right?
Yep.
Temporary permanent sign? Or seasonal permanent sign?
Well, that's
Yeah.
that's what I'm thinking. Right?
Yeah,
We should have something in here for seasonal signs.
Yeah,
And
but that might be,
seasonal, 4 seasons to a year. So, let me think about that. I think that is an issue that needs to be
Well,
addressed.
think about it, Glenn. If you got something that was a seasonal one, then you wouldn't even have to go back and renew a permit. You just say, hey, this is my seasonal sign. Get it approved once, done and over with. If you did
Right.
something along that line, yeah. If you could work up something on that, that sounds like a better idea.
Seasonal or agricultural. I mean, that's
Right.
One more
it's-
thing in here, though.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we need to add something so that
Yeah.
you wouldn't
No,
have
that's
to
a
pull a
good
permit
point.
every single time.
Right.
So, all right.
Yeah, I mean, keeping in mind we do have an this is still at least limitedly an agricultural area, and there's a few places that around us that would have the same issues that Glen would. And we certainly don't want to put a crimp on our farmers. They've got enough stuff to deal with these days as it is.
Any other comments about the ordinance?
Let's start with AC and go around the table.
Oh, I'm fine.
You good? You sure? You got that smile on your face.
I'm good.
All right. Pat?
You know, I keep bringing up over and over again being similar to some of the communities around us. It's not trying to take the, shortcut or anything on it. The way I look at it is the closer we are to the ones around us, the less we're going to be challenged. Because, if someone all of a sudden says, well, this is the general area, do I want to challenge everybody? Am I going to, but that being said, I think there's also, like with the seasonal, I think that's something that might be a little unique where Grand Blanc would have no use for something like that. So I think we kind of have to make sure we balance ourselves out on that.
Lloyd?
Nothing right now.
Nope, just keep it simple. I just like, the more complex it is, the harder for businesses to comply with the things, harder to enforce it. Is keeping it as simple as possible. I know we have to have sign ordinances and do some reasonable things for safety in particular. Once you start saying whether it's pleasing or whatever, I kind of think you're over the line a little bit, because it should be the business owner that makes that decision. And the public that visits him can tell him whether he did it right, he or she did it right at the time. Or not visit him in the case if they don't like the sign.
Yeah, I ended up at your house. I Googled your house. Right? You should have had a sign out there telling me I shouldn't go to your house.
Yeah. Right? So just my comment would be, as a small, I'm a small business entrepreneur myself, so I'm very mindful of the need for businesses to get their message out there. And so for me, I'm balancing that with the reason personally I moved up to Holly in the first place, which was to get away from the look and feel of Farmington Hills and get back up to a more rural characteristic where little mom and pop shops happened. So, I definitely appreciate all of the comments. Glenn, the things that Glenn has brought up, it's definitely things we've got to take a look at, because I certainly don't want to run anybody out of business. That's not the point here. But at the same time, I don't want us to ever end up looking like 7 Mile in Detroit or Dixie Highway in Waterford. I mean, we're going to end up with some more business growth along Grange Hall and to some extent along Dixie Highway. And as that happens, I want to welcome the business while at the same time making sure that our up north feel remains. Mm-hmm. And I want those businesses to come in doing so in a way that is respectful of that, because the businesses are going to come and go. The people that live here and have lived here, like your family, for multiple generations, I mean, we've got something special up here, and I think we've got to make sure that as we grow, we do it in a responsible way. So that's my piece. Mike, do you have anything else for us? Or?
No, I think the next question I have is more procedural. Today's the 17th. I don't know if we have enough time to get notice in the paper to hold a public hearing for the August meeting or not.
Is it 10 days or is it
15 days?
15 days.
We'd have to get it in quickly.
Right. And so, the question is that something you want to shoot for? And I can get in touch with Karen tomorrow.
Well, this is election day, so I know Carrie.
Well, then let's not do that.
Right.
No.
Yeah,
No, and you've got some stuff to bring back to us anyway.
Right.
So we'll just put it back on the agenda as old business for next meeting.
And then we're going to shoot for September for public hearing.
Yep.
And then get it to the township board and wrap this up.
Yeah.
I think we're right
We're there. We're close.
Question in September. Is our September meeting going to be off by the holidays or anything?
Yeah,
Labor Day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if it is, we might want to talk next month so we're not so close to the board meeting. Because if we had been able to approve this tonight, to say we did, there was no way we could have handed it to the board that quickly.
So the board meets the third Wednesday?
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So if we moved it back to the You don't have to do it on a Tuesday, right? So
No. Yeah, I guess it would be up to you how that would work for you. If you got it in August, would you be able to give it to us that we could have
Well,
it for
you
September?
guys thinking we need to move our board meeting in September? Our meeting in September?
Yeah, what day does it?
That's the day after Labor Day.
Labor Day.
Yeah.
The 4th.
Is it the day after? Oh, okay.
It's the
Oh,
day
so it's the day
It's
after.
the day
Okay.
after.
Oh,
That's why
okay.
I'm asking.
I
Are you,
was thinking
is,
it was-
if we're all going to be here,
Yeah, no, never mind. I was thinking Labor Day fell.
are you guys
Yeah.
available?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys all available?
Okay. Because I just look at time. Because if we had to move the meeting again,
Yeah, I
we
think
could fall
we'll
into
be
the
good.
same-
I'll be here.
When is the August meeting?
August meeting would be what about 2 weeks from now?
the 7th.
7th.
That's hard for all of us just because it's
That's
election
election
day.
day.
I'm gonna be out of
Hear an
town
email
that
afterwards.
week.
So
Yeah.
we need to move our August meeting, is what you're thinking?
And the 14th is our library.
It'd be
board meeting.
nice,
Right.
only
Which is
because
next
we have to
Tuesday.
rush back and forth, but
Yeah.
either way.
And you said the 14th is your library board meeting?
So our next meeting is going to be an important meeting, right? Because Holly Hills is going to be back. Right, it's our understanding that they will be back.
Right, that's true.
So if we're going to move it, we need to decide that now. So
Yeah.
we can
Oh,
get
absolutely.
Yeah, because
You
that's
know,
election.
Yeah, election day probably wouldn't be the wisest to be
The Monday before? I mean, I don't know where location we can figure out.
Well,
I'm free.
okay.
The Monday
yeah,
before?
he's the biggest factor right there. If we
Let me-
don't have him,
Monday,
we don't
Monday,
have, we don't
Monday
have
or
anything,
Wednesday
so.
that week.
There's no Monday before in August. unless
Yeah.
you're going
Monday
back
the
in July.
6th, the day before?
It's just the day before, and I don't think that solves our problem if you
No, it
go from
doesn't.
the 7th to the 6th.
The 6th would not solve our problem?
No.
Why
It doesn't work for me. I'm on vacation.
Oh, you're on
Vacation the whole week.
And I'm gone the 9th through the 4th. I'm gone the 9th through the 14th.
Yeah. And AC and I both have library meeting at 14.
We do it the 15th.
Or the 8th.
15th is going to be the third Wednesday. That's the same night as the township
Oh,
board meeting.
okay.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to be available.
you know? You said the 8th would work for you? Would it
That's
work
okay
for you?
me,
How about you,
I
like
think.
Pulling it
8th
up
of
here.
August? No, I'm gone that whole week.
that whole week?
So,
Well, you're gonna be going anyway.
And I'm leaving the 9th. Let me pull this up here.
Well,
August 1st is a Wednesday. Is that something that would work?
what's your time you're headed out of town,
Me? I don't know why.
Lloyd?
Mike, are you good August
We're
1st or
leaving,
something?
Friday the 3rd.
Yeah, you
Friday
go
the
over
3rd.
So what about
I'll
August
be gone
1st?
the whole week.
August the 1st? That work?
It'd be a
for you?
Wednesday.
That work for me.
All right.
Yeah.
Get with Stacy and find out if that works for her.
Yeah.
That makes it a week earlier.
I like
So-
those.
Yeah.
Makes pretty
Almost
tight.
a week earlier.
So we need to make sure that we let boss engineering know, which I'll do.
Yeah.
Okay. Courtney, are you good August 1st?
Yep.
Okay.
It's good for you.
On this call.
Change this now.
So do we need a motion to move the meeting? Okay. Can I get a motion to move the meeting August 1st?
So
So moved. I deserve it this time.
We'll give that one AC and a
Yes,
support
AC.
for Glenn. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? What? You said aye?
Aye.
Okay. Hearing none, motion carries. So we'll be August 1st, 6:30. I don't know for sure if we'll be in this room. We'll figure that out. I don't know if there's another.
Get with Mike to make sure
Yeah.
Holly Hills
So the
knows
November
exactly where
meeting's
we'll
also
be,
on
so
election night. I don't know
nail
if
that down quickly so we don't have any.
November meetings on election night?
Yeah. They both were this year, I don't know why. That worked out randomly.
Let's worry about moving that next month when
Yeah, but
Stacy,
just a thought,
when
if you wanna
Stacy
start thinking
is
about
here. We make sure that, okay.
So we left September alone.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
after
yeah, we're all
Labor Day,
gonna,
so
as far as I
yeah,
know, we're all
that's
gonna be here, so.
Yeah.
I forgot how Labor Day falls on.
All right, so August 1st. Okay. Moving on to reports. We'll start with you.
We're picking on you.
Yeah. Well, I drove through the Holly Hills just before the meeting here, so Falk Road I think is definitely a problem, which I do not see how you can put a lot of traffic there safely. I don't know what the real answer to that is, whether the road commission itself will do something about that, or I don't think we probably can do much, but I doubt that they want to move their entrance, which is one of the things you mentioned, but that would make, the closer they get to East Holly Road, the better as far as I'm concerned, but but it probably doesn't fit in their plans. I had not been through the park before. It is much more home-like than other manufactured home places. Probably a little bit worried seeing their plans. I'm not sure that they were leaving places for garages, and I thought that's the one thing that made it look like, not all of them have garages, but quite a few of them have garages or carports, and that makes it look more homey, and I think a nicer, more permanent place for people to stay than some I've seen. So, and again, I don't think we can prevent the whole thing, but I think our thing is trying to make sure it's safe. I was interested to see they put we were suggesting sidewalks.
Yeah.
And a wider drive, and that's the thing I would be worried about if you had a narrow driveway and no sidewalks. I thought that was a thing for disaster. I don't think we could ever police people parking on the sides of the road kind of issue. So I think that's, it needs to be wider or more parking spaces or something like that. So anyway, it goes on, but road. I think the Falk Road issue is a big issue, and they need to have their exit, but. And they have probably no other way to do it on East Holly Road, or else they would have done it to begin with. So it probably is Falk Road. But anyway, that's my comment.
Okay. AC?
Nothing.
Pat?
On a different subject, don't know how much we really have to say about it, but after they were somewhat cooperative, I say somewhat cynically, Consumers Power, have you noticed that their landscaping's dying out on them?
So,
I didn't know. Is that something that the
Code enforcement.
code enforcement, that would be strictly code enforcement?
Plan.
Okay, so that would be in violation of site plan, because I'd like to see something done on that. I'm still very concerned, and I think that's something that we need to get clarified with Holly Hills, is with the water. I mean, they keep having water failures there and that's like, I think it's imperative that, we get some kind of direction on what we can say, because that water system is not supporting what's there right now very well. And, I'm not optimistic that it can support anything else on top of this. I'm hoping maybe to delay here, maybe something will come from the village on that, but the only damper I put on anything coming from the village is, after the past history with the water system, it's going to be absolutely up to the developers to pick up the cost on connecting in, and that's probably going to be the death knell on that idea, because there is absolutely no way the village could sell to the residents that this is a good idea. Every time we open our water bill every month, we're reminded of the past mistakes, so that's not something I'm really optimistic about. But on the other hand, if they were to cut into the Holly water system, there's the double-edged sword. That would probably mean they think there's enough money there to expand and do the whole park. So it's kind of like a catch-22. It'd be like solve a problem for the people in the park, but then it creates a bigger problem, because we'll have the whole park in there. So.
Can the village system even handle it?
It doesn't seem, the Mr. Clausen doesn't seem to think there'd be a problem, but the problem would be there have to be extra things added along the line there, and that's where people in the village seem to think they're going to balk at, because they're going to say, well, it's your system. You should be putting the main and all this stuff in there. That's one argument. That's one side of the argument. The other side is, you get them to pay for it and put it in there. It benefits the village, it can help offset some of the costs. So, that's kind of one of both ways. But my understanding was that they could handle it, but it would be the cost of upgrading that would be the prohibitive thing, I think.
Upgrading the entire village of Holly system.
They didn't seem to think that the whole system was just a particular line along there. But, that's not to say that someone else might not come up with that, so I can't. But I don't see it happening, no, because that just, I think the village is going to say, sure, here's the price tag, and I think that's going to be the end of it right there. But it would be the easiest and simplest solution to the problem.
So can we ask Boston Engineering?
Well, hold on. Let's get through reports, and then I'll give you some leeway with public comment. All right, Lloyd?
on that same line, I can tell you years ago when I was fighting this battle that we got them access to the sewer system in Holly, in the village. And after we got it, they said it's too expensive. You know, thank you for getting it, but we're not going to pay for it. And they went on their own. So our goal was to stop the treatment plant out there. We wanted it to all go through the village, and it didn't happen. So I wish you luck, but it's a tough battle. One more thing I want to mention. The city of Grand Blanc is going to start having artists paint the electrical boxes that are in the city. You know, the big boxes they put over the equipment. They're commissioning artists to paint different scenes or whatever on these boxes to try and make them more attractive. We should look at that when it happens and to see what it looks like, and maybe include that in some of these. That you can do that, or we'd commission someone to do that.
Where they getting funding?
I'm not sure how it's all funded. I don't know if the artists have to do it themselves.
If you need examples, I have barns they can practice on.
There you go. Okay. So I'll let you know when those start happening, and we'll take a look at them.
Just a couple things. Thursday, AC, Glenn, myself, and George are going up to Frankenmuth for a Michigan Townships Association dinner and conference. It's going to be my first time at one of these, but with these particular types. But I've heard that they're well worthwhile, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. I am going to be the optimist about the Holly Hills hooking up to the village water for the standpoint of, if they do it, then 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, the responsibility for maintaining that system will fall on the village and not on the park. So yes, it will be a initial cost to them to do the hookup, but then any problems, any issues, any maintenance, any upkeep is out of their hands and onto the village, including upgrades and whatever else might have to happen down the road. So if I was the developer, especially with all of the concerns that have, and the bad publicity and everything that's been brought up, I would gladly look to pawning off that responsibility to a municipality rather than having to worry about.
The question is, are they in it for the long term? Or will they be selling to somebody else, so they only look for what his immediate cost is?
Well,
How they look at those.
that's certainly a good question. I mean, with the 3, and somewhere I heard something about a 4th phase. Now I don't know if that was rumor, speculation, or if that was really going to happen.
That's my concern. If they hooked up, that would be my concern. That when they're talking about a large expense for that water system, and they say, "Sure, we'll do it," then my worry is, here comes the rest of that project, because they're going to say, yeah, if we can do this,
Well,
we're going to have to do this to get our money back out of it.
I think you're looking at two different issues. I think, unfortunately, I think the project is going to move forward one way or another. Mm-hmm. So in my head, what I'm looking for is the safest way to do it, wow. And for all of the complaints about the village water costs and the calcium or whatever's in there that likes to clog up my water heater, the water system itself is pretty safe. I mean, we haven't had, I think there's been one water main issue in the 8 years that I've lived in Holly, and that got a couple years ago, and that got resolved very quickly. I would put a lot more faith in the village maintaining their water than I would some testing service from Highland or wherever it's coming from. So I think we all need to nudge as much as we can that as citizens and even as officials that is probably the safest way to go for everybody. I mean, the project's going to move forward. I mean, I don't see anything short of a court order stopping it. And that's what I've always told everybody, that the only way you're going to stop a consent agreement and a consent judgment is with a higher court overturning it. There's nothing anybody else can do other than a higher court, and there has to be grounds. And there has been talks with the attorney, and the attorney has basically said, look, you can go to court and challenge anything. I mean, if you want to spend the money to do it, you can scratch the township attorney a check, and she can go to court and say, well, this wasn't filed right, and this and this and this. On the other hand, the other side is going to hold up that consent judgment, and chances are we're dead in the water. Now, is that 100%? Of course not. the township board will have to decide whether or not.
What do you want to tell them, in case anybody saw the agenda for the township meeting
Yeah,
tomorrow?
I'm coming up to that.
Okay. I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
you know, the township board will have to decide if it's a wise use of taxpayer money to try and challenge the consent judgment. We can all offer our opinions, but at the end of the day, the township trustees are the ones who are the stewards of that money and have to make that decision. Tomorrow, the Holly Hills will be on the agenda strictly from a standpoint of update and discussion. There will be no motions on site plan approvals or any of that because it still does have to come before this board first. Supervisor Cullis contacted me and said, he wanted me to let everybody know that it was going to be out there and on the agenda just so that it can be discussed. The contents of that discussion, I don't know. But just to dispel any rumors, there's been no backroom deals cut, no site plans that have been secretly submitted. Nothing has been and nothing will be approved tomorrow evening. So, and you can count on that. So that's all I've got. Mike, you got anything to wrap up?
Something to put on the radar for November. Legalization of marijuana is going to be on the ballot. So I know you guys had discussions about the medical marijuana, and you amended the zoning ordinance to not allow the uses that the state would allow. Doesn't affect caregiver law, so it doesn't affect personal usage. But just something to be aware of. It's coming down. And
do you see, or have you heard, or got any impression that, like, the decision we made could be challenged after the election?
No. So in the language that's in there, you have to be eligible to opt in. It's going to be similar to the current medical marijuana, where you have to opt in.
Okay.
But in order to opt in for the legalization of recreational marijuana, you also have to opt in for the medical marijuana. You can opt in for medical and not recreational, but you can't just do recreational.
Okay.
So the same protections that are in the current law will follow. They're trying to follow that as close as possible.
So if it becomes legal recreationally, you can't stop somebody from smoking it, but you can still decide whether or not you can still regulate whether or not you want the industry in the community or not.
Your regulation of the commercial aspect, not the
so that aspect of it hasn't been changed by the ballot initiative. Okay.
No.
Courtney, anything?
I really enjoy these meetings. I don't know.
And that was without sarcasm.
Whose terms expired this year? Is it? There's 2 terms expired. Whose term?
On our board, I don't know. I was reappointed this past year, so I think they're 3 year.
Yes.
I think Ted and myself.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. You and Ted. No, you got reappointed with me last year.
What?
Mm-hmm.
So
Glenn might be. Were you filling? Glenn was filling a partial term.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's been nice knowing you.
Be quiet.
I
Should I be
completely.
quieter? Is that what you're saying? in these meetings?
I completely kid. So yeah. With that said, so let's move on to
public comment.
public comment. Yeah, and please state your name and address.
Mark Taylor, 15566 Falk Road. You pretty much kind of went over a few things I was going to mention. I'll hand this out to you guys. But one thing I did want to say that is I know we brought up the Holly Hills things last meeting. It will be discussed tomorrow. And that's one thing I did want to say is that we can jump around like a bunch of swans and everything in a mating dance, but I do want to have George Cullis at least provide some answers on some of the things we're talking about, like the detailed maps of the Falk Road and what the impact is going to be on Falk Road, the cost to Holly Township for schools, fire, police, and other services, because there will be schools definitely will be impacted. the township force Emeritus to hook in the village, and what that would have to do with everything else concerning that. So that was kind of the first 4 things on this thing I'll hand you tonight. Is again, you kind of noted that George Cullis may go over some of that tomorrow night, but yeah, we just want to be updated as to what's going on. Phase 2 and 3. I don't know if Boss Engineering can give us a preliminary, some sort of primitive site plan on Phase 3. They mentioned Phase 4. I would only assume that if they have a Phase 4, it would obviously legally have to occur within the perimeter of that consent judgment. I don't believe there's any property that they either could purchase or may want to purchase, but I don't understand that Phase 4 comment the last time from Emeritus or Boss Engineering.
That's who said it.
As well.
I knew I heard it from somebody.
Yeah, so because we were all like Phase 4. Well, it's going to have to go within that consent judgment and
next
that
level higher.
perimeter. Well, they're going to have to go deeper because along Falk Road they only have like 11 acres back. Now, the original site plan back in the 80s shows wetlands back there. So I would be very interested to see how far, because if you go, Phase 2 comes right in front of my property. The Phase 3 was a linear along Falk Road, only going halfway back of the property that they owned due to wetlands. So I would not hope that they have any kind of intentions on doing a second half of Phase 4 back behind Phase 3. But I would ask Boss Engineering if they could give us at least a preliminary outline of Phase 3 and where it goes, because the only site plan I have is the one that Gerald Miner generated in the mid-'80s, not through Boss Engineering. So I'd be worried about their wetlands and their Phase 4, and it has to obviously within the consent judgment, but I don't believe they can build on that wetlands behind Phase 3 as it would have stood right now. And then I'd just be curious if Boss Engineering can give us an idea of how many and what capacity wells they plan on blowing into that property. And are there any more wastewater treatment plants? Or is the one that's existing going to handle the additional 495 homes or whatever else is going in there? So some of these answers I'd like Boss Engineering to get with Cullis and the township and say, what is going on here? What is going to happen? What are their future plans? Because their site plans that I got myself, went down there and got them myself, show no wastewater treatment plant on Phase 2. And they don't even show well locations as far as I can tell. They got landscape plans and everything else they need, but there's no indication of how much water they plan on drawing up from that area. And again, we got the shallow wells around that area. One of my questions would be the old dump site. If we get runoff from Phase 2 going across Falk Road into the old dump site, that dump site filters directly into my sister's property, and there are contamination wells right on her driveway. I don't even know the last time they were checked or who would check them, but that runoff could come directly to both my property and her property. So I don't know if it flows that direction, but that's something, who would look into that? And again, Oakland County generated a report number, but they don't seem to want to send it to me for some reason about Falk Road. But it's not even Falk Road, East Holly Road,
Sure.
and Grange Hollow Road as well. Thank you.
Just one thing I would say, and it can be part of your question tomorrow. You talked about Holly Township forcing them to connect. I don't believe that they can force that. I think it can be, and I don't think they would. I think it would have to be an agreement between the Village of Holly and the developer.
Right, exactly. And back when Gerald Miner was developing it, and I know Lloyd knows part of this because he was involved in the whole time, it was we'd like you to. The developer's like, well, maybe, and then I guess the cost was prohibitive, which that's the first time I'd heard that. And then, Gerald Miner's like, listen, I've been fighting with you guys for 10 years. He goes, you're either going to do it my way or screw you. I'm going to do it my way. And that's basically what happened. We had also heard at one point Gerald Miner had changed the locations of the entrances to go immediately across the face of our properties, because not now, I'm talking back in the 90s, that those were the people who were fighting him. So when he got the consent judgment as a little bit of a up yours, he changed the location of the entranceway. And I'd seriously, if I have to fight it legally, we will, but I don't see any reason why they could not put the entrance 200 yards down and affect that. And are they going to put a third entrance in for Phase 3 further down Falk Road? We don't know that answer yet either.
Yeah.
So that's something I'd like to see if we can get found out. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else for public comment? Angela, I'm looking right at you. Richard, Marlo? No, nobody? Okay. Going once, going twice. We will adjourn this meeting at 8:27 p.m. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you, sir.
Highlights. And then one for you, and then somebody's going to pass out.
Yes.
George might be able to help. George might be able to help you get back. I mean, he's got.
He said he could, and I figured
He was the one. He was the one who.
So how's the backyard, y'all?
Went and asked it. Yeah, he said it was going to be Right. And then it came off. It came off because of the delay in the. There was the intention originally was we were going to have a